The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Gerald Celente for the next 30 minutes is our guest, founder of the Trends Research Institute. Really needs no introduction here. And, of course, many years ago, he predicted the commodity prices, the oil, the food going up, triggering food riots. He, of course, predicted the Tea Party rising several years before it did. And he is a frequent contributor to our radio broadcast. And I wanted to get him on about Egypt, about the economy, this new giant budget, all these huge tax increases, like 69% on state income tax in Illinois, the austerity where they raise the taxes but cut the benefits, the governor of Wisconsin coming out on NPR on Monday and saying, oh, if state employees don't like their pay being slashed and us taking more of their money for the pension fund, we'll just call the National Guard out on them. And some say, yeah, cut their pay. That'll pay off the deficit. It's the derivatives. That's 1.5 quadrillion. You could cut everything and it wouldn't pay for even a few percentage points of it. We don't owe this money. And so Gerald has broken all this down, but I want him to go over it and give us the big picture geopolitically of what's happening and continuing to tweak his trends forecast, what he sees coming up in the next few months here in the United States. Gerald, great having you with us.
Hey, thanks, Alex.
You've got the floor. What do you want to cover first?
Well, let's look at Egypt first. If you go back to our Trends Journal, we've been predicting this. About 2 years ago, we came out with Workers of the World Unite 2.0. This has nothing to do with democracy, theocracy. It has to do with the bottom line. And the bottom line is this. When the money stops flowing down to Main Street, the blood begins to flow on the streets. And the money is not flowing down. We're looking at, for example, in Egypt, the per capita wage, the average wage of an Egyptian is $10 a day. That's according to the Egyptian statistics. Now, when you see food prices going up, you got a lot of angry people because the cream at the top of the pyramid, if you will, they're taking all the dough. So what we wrote about also in the Trends Journal that you have, the winter edition that went out just weeks before, days actually, before the Tunisian uprisings, we sent out a synopsis. One of them was Youth of the World Unite. And I've been talking about this on your show as well. Here these kids, figure it out. You have a 50% unemployment rate in Spain. Probably in Italy it's around 35. The kids angry. They have college degrees in worthlessness. There's no job future. They have this white shoe boy language. I love it. You brought it up. Austerity measures. Here's some austerity measures. We're going to cut the minimum wage, as they did in Ireland, 12%. They're not making anything anyway. Let's cut it lower. We're going to increase the cost of everything, all the services, all the licensing fees. We'll be after you for every little thing you do wrong, and you'll pay more for it. And we're going to cut services. Oh, and by the way, those pensions, we're going to cut those along with their benefits. And your retirement age, I got a good one for you. We're going to increase the retirement age till after you die. How's that? Oh, one other thing. We're going to raise taxes across the board. And we have to do this because the white shoe boys, I love the language, they don't want to take a haircut on the bad bets that they made, so you have to pay them off. What's going on, in, as we said, Off With Their Heads 2.0, the Autumn Trends Journal, what's going on in Tunisia? What's going on in Egypt? It's not Arab exclusive. You know, this is the beginning of... It's going to go to Europe, as we said. You know, Alex, remember when you were a kid, they taught you in school? World War I began when they assassinated the Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo. And you had the multiple choice junk. You know, you had to figure it out, the dates. No, it didn't. There were brush fires. The aristocracy started losing their money, and they started trying to steal it from everybody else. and they're doing the same thing now. We are on the doorstep of the first great war, the Spring Trends Journal, of the 20th century. The brush fires are starting in Tunisia. They're starting in Egypt. They're starting in Bahrain, in Iran, in Libya, Algeria, Morocco, Greece, Spain, Portugal, Italy, the UK. You're going to see uprisings around the world as the little people start getting squeezed more and more.
Well, Gerald, now the UK is reporting 4% increase in inflation a month, and that's even the government's own cook numbers. We're getting more reports every day of TSA agents planting drugs on people, sexually harassing them. One guy stole $160,000 reportedly from check bags. I mean, we're just seeing more and more corruption come out, and now every major Islamic nation in the Middle East is in turmoil. That is spreading. In fact, here are some of the headlines. Egypt's protest flare despite military warning. Anti-government protests spread to Libya. Thousands of police confront protesters in Yemen. Protests spreading all over Saudi Arabia. Bahrain protesters urge more pressure. 100 Egyptians reach Italy amid Arab exodus. Carter says Muslim Brotherhood, nothing to be afraid of. So the social engineers knew that these upheavals were about to happen because of food prices. Their own reports admitted that. So they went in and triggered the overthrow of Mubarak, thinking they're going to control it, but clearly they're not going to be able to control it. And you talked about war in the Middle East being the answer to this depression. Clearly the social engineers are trying to nudge this crisis in a direction they can control, and then they will pose as the arbiters or the referees of the unfolding crisis.
I don't know if it's being engineered. I think the whole thing's out of control the way I see it.
No, they know it's out of control, so they went ahead and triggered it.
Oh, yeah, they're going to engineer it. I mean, let's go back. Let's play back the Egyptian uprising. As it began, we heard from Joe Biden, right? He said that Mubarak wasn't a dictator and he should stay in office. I looked about how long was Mubarak in for 30 years. You know how long Biden's been sucking off the public tit? 36 years. Of course he wasn't a dictator, not to Biden. He's been living his whole life off us. And $40 billion of our dollars going over there. And then you heard Hillary Clinton say, it has to be an orderly transition. They have to get their roles together, the voting rolls. So now you're hearing champions for democracy. I've never seen, that's the engineering, is this hypocrisy. The hypocrisy coming out of Washington. They supported this guy for 30 years. And here's the other thing that everybody should really be furious at. We were mentioning about Obama's new budget. Was it about $50 billion going into foreign aid? Let me tell you what foreign aid is. Foreign aid is your money that you work for every day. They take it out of your pocket, and then they send it to their buddies overseas that they want to do deals with. That's all it is. Grow up about this. So let's stop this foreign aid baloney, because Egypt got $40 billion of ours. What is Israel getting? $3 billion plus a year. I don't want my money going anywhere. How about this? How about sending it to Detroit? There's a war zone.
Well, meanwhile, we have U.S. troops being shot at, U.S. police being killed, U.S. diplomats, U.S. ICE agents, and the media is not worried about that. The government's not worried about that. Mexican troops now coming across the U.S. border and searching citizens at checkpoints. But we have telescreens going in Walmart telling us spy on our neighbors. They're now going to have Homeland Security announcements during NBA basketball games, trying to make Janet Napolitano some type of rock star. We have just all of this going on. TSA robbing people. It really is scary how corrupt this society's going. Summing it up, where do you see America in a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years? I mean, you've talked about revolution, tax rebellions. You talked about it years before it came. Now it's starting. Where do you see it going?
Well, on the one end, it's what you're talking about. They're going to clamp down on us more and more. Again, the hypocrisy. Hillary Clinton talking about the freedom of the internet while they're clamping down on this end. And in the Trends Journal, there's that wonderful piece in the winter edition by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, Loss of Liberty. That's where it's going. So it's hard to say if there's going to be revolts in this country because we see the hypocrisy. As they were talking about, let the people in Egypt revolt, don't come down on the journalists. What do they do in this country? Look what happened at the G20 meetings in Pittsburgh a few years ago. They closed down the whole city. You couldn't protest. All those goon squads. Maybe they should bring in the Egyptian
And it turned
goon
out in
squad.
Canada, the police were lying when they said no protest allowed, that a special law had been passed. Turned out they were just lying. Here's USA Today. Kill switch internet bill alarms privacy experts. The government's openly saying they want to be able to shut the internet off, and they're getting ready to launch a false flag against the web. There's no doubt about that.
No doubt about it. And they're going to launch a bigger false flag. It's going to be terrorism or war. Mark my words. Here, for anybody that has a attention deficit disorder or suffering from Alzheimer's disease or living in, a little kid that can't put it together, remember the main. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. Oh, here's one for you. The Gulf of Tonkin, remember that beautiful lie? They'll lie about anything. They'll take you to war. And this is what we wrote about, Alex, back in 2008 when the whole bailout scams began. We said when the bailout bubbles burst, the next stop is war. We're heading toward the first great war of the 21st century. You mentioned about the czarette, Janet Napolitano. That bureaucratic, she knows a lot about security, she's really on time. And, look what they're doing. Look at Obama's budget. They're increasing Homeland Security. They're not cutting defense.
That's right. They announced tens of billions of dollars for more naked body scanners to roll out on the streets, the courthouses, everywhere.
Everywhere in the cities, in the states. More money to control you and me. That's all this is about. As they lose control, they take more control. Let's look more at the budget. Defense. They're cutting defense. I love it. They go $78 billion. Then you read it. $78 billion over 5 years. So what are we talking about? $15 billion? Now let's add in some inflation into that. They're increasing the defense budget. So what they're doing is they're taking the money and they're putting it more into apparatuses that control us more. So when you ask me, what is it going to look like? They're going to control us more and more and clamp down on dissent more and more. On the financial end, we had warned, as other people have, about the rampant inflation. You mentioned the UK 4%. You look what's going on in India, in China. What are these protests about? People can't put food in their mouth. Food prices are at all-time highs, and they're earning all-time lows. The reason for this inflation is not only supply and demand. It's because, kiddies, commodities are based in dollars.
And now we have the French.
Bernanke devalue the dollar, so everything else is going up. They're robbing you.
And now, Gerald, the head of the G20, the French minister, came out and said dump the dollar a month ago, Hu Jintao. And now that consensus is there to go ahead and get rid of the dollar in the next year or so as the world reserve currency. But like cockroaches, when they've been sprayed with poison, they start running around even faster. The system is even flooding the world even that much faster. And we see inflation rearing its head here, which hurts people on fixed incomes, you name it. I mean, any way you slice it, this is going to be a disaster.
It is. Oh, by the way, there's no inflation. Look at all those people out there that haven't gotten COLA increases. I was on Judge Napolitano's show. He's one of my favorites last week. I said, this is the USSA. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. How could you say there's no inflation? And it began under Clinton, and they keep the lie going. There's rampant inflation. Anybody that works and pays for things every day. Again, not the billionaires and the multimillionaires. You know, they don't know what the price of a gallon of gasoline is. So what we're seeing here is insidious inflation. And by the way, the Europeans are as responsible for this as the American central bank. They're doing the same thing. They're flooding the market with cheap money. Because, again, I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Go to Bloomberg. It's even there today. They're worried about the financiers getting haircuts. I mean, so they're flooding more money into the system.
And the big central banks are making record profits. What do you think about Ron Paul, shifting gears, going into this year's election? He won the CPAC poll 2 years in a row. They re-aired an old video of him being booed and played it on Fox and said that that's what happened this year when he won. I mean, this was a hoax that they ran. They are really scared of him.
You know, I've been getting some emails from young people who attended that, actually. And one of them was very insightful, saying how the young people really don't like the Republican Party at all, and they're really Ron Paul supporters. And that's what the core of this country is moving toward. As a matter of fact, you've heard me say the phrase before, progressive libertarian. And as a matter of fact, Judge Andrew Napolitano had on Ron Paul and Ralph Nader. He told me he got more responses from that show just about from any other one. That's the direction. Progressive in terms of the environment. Oh, by the way, all you Obama lovers, you wimpocrats out there, you know, you quiche-eating, grinning, and balsamic smile people, Obama's cutting the EPA budget by an estimated 30%. How's that for some more change you can't believe in? So what we're seeing is the revolution is going to come from these educated young people who want to become involved, and they are the Ron Paul supporters. I'll tell you, my dream ticket would be a Ron Paul, someone like a Ralph Nader, and a Secretary of State like a Judge Andrew Napolitano. I'm on a lot of shows, as you well know, Alex. I respect him more than, and on the mainstream media I'm talking about, I respect him more than anybody. He says it like it is.
Yeah, he said on this show that the 9/11 official story is a fraud. And, boy, that caused quite a furor. We're going to come back with final ideas and points with the one, the only Gerald Celente. I'm Alex Jones. Stay with us. Gerald Celente joining us. Gerald, Obama last week went ahead and expanded the Security Prosperity Partnership, North American Union, to say we have a continental security perimeter using the crises in Mexico they've engineered. We see just continued evidence of the Depression unfolding. In the last 4 minutes or so that we have left, what else do you think is most important on your radar screen, or what other tidbits do you want to impart to folks right now?
Well, this is really a time to be vigilant. Something we believe is going to happen of a very large magnitude. Again, we're not alarmists and we're not Monday morning quarterbacks. We call the shots before they happen with these riots that are now taking place in Tunisia and Egypt. We said it, that it would be young people, it would be, and we said, and this time the revolution will not only be televised, it'll be Twittered, Facebooked, and YouTubed. And so people really need to know, watch what's going on very closely. And in going back to the Obama lie, and again, your Obama deception, well, that documentary should win awards, because you really nailed it so early on. And anybody that hasn't seen that, I really highly recommend that they show it to everyone that they know who still believes in the great lie. And here's another part of the great lie. When Obama became president, he said that they've earmarked $2 trillion worth of savings that they saw in the federal budget. Well, obviously, they never came through with that because they weren't there. And then they said, according to the Congressional Budget Office, in 2009, that do you know what the deficit would be in 2011, according to their projections? $500 billion. What is it? Oh, it's estimated to be $1.6 trillion. So the lies that are coming out right in front of our face are beyond the belief of anything that you could make up. And as I said, what we're most concerned about now is something is going to happen, a real, it's either going to be a terrorism or a call to war at some level. And by the way, I only saw it once. I haven't had time to follow up on it, about Petraeus leaving Afghanistan. Is that true?
Well, there's calls for them to try to start pulling out and perhaps removing Petraeus.
No, Petraeus himself leaving.
I haven't confirmed that, no.
Oh, because I saw something come across on that. And if the point that I'm making is that these are losing wars. They're losing in Pakistan in that CIA drone war. They're losing in Afghanistan. And there's no end in sight in Iraq. Something we believe is going to happen. So what I'm saying is that I believe when it does happen, they're going to close down the banks. And they closed down Wall Street when 9/11 happened. This time there's going to be a run on cash, run on ATM. So I would just suggest to people that, you know, have your e-foods, have your survival gear in place. Because if the worst does, and have money on hand, and have you know, I believe in gold, as you know.
So you're saying this depression could really accelerate and become a complete meltdown?
Yes, that's all they need. That's all we need now is a geopolitical flashpoint, and this thing unravels, bam, the bottom falls out. So what I'm saying is that if the worst doesn't happen, at least you're prepared.
Absolutely. In closing, David Petraeus quitting. The Times of London is reporting that he is going to be stepping down sometime near the end of the year, but now the Pentagon is denying that. So who knows what the truth is, Gerald?
Who knows what the truth is? And so the point being, if you don't prepare now, you could lose everything. The stock market is a rigged game. Only little kids believe that they could play it and win it. Because with the high-frequency trading, the dark pools, everybody knows what's going on and watching it.
Absolutely. Trendsresearch.com. Our site's Infowars.com. Thank you, Gerald.